Dr. White. I'm one of the co-chairs of the One Book Committee, and this is the PVCC Women in STEM H panel as part of the One Book program for 2017. And thank you to the faculty for coming out to speak with us today. Each of the faculty members is going to introduce themselves and tell you what program they're in, what they teach and their degrees, and then they're going to go through afterwards and talk about things, and then halfway through we'll open it up for questions from the audience.
I'm Irene Agahawa. I am a nursing faculty here. I teach nursing at the Health and Life Sciences Division. I have a master's in nursing education and a master's in public health.
I'm Wendy Doss. I'm a professor of math, so I teach math. I have a bachelor's in math and music and a master's in math and a doctorate in math education.
I'm Barbara Heil, and I am a professor of chemistry. I have a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD in chemistry, so yeah, boring.
Hi, I'm Ann Allison, and I'm a professor of biology. I have a bachelor's, master's, and PhD in biology/biochemistry. And I did research for 4 years after my PhD, and then I taught at a small liberal arts college for 4 years prior to coming to PVCC, and I've been full-time here for the past 5 years.
I am Sue Haas, and I am the Chief Information Officer here at Piedmont Virginia Community College. I started a career in 1984, so I've been at it for a while. Technology has changed quite a bit in that time frame. I've had various titles, all in technology or user services using computers or Unix administration and lots of different types of things. So I've seen a wide variety of technical career opportunities. I would love to chat with any one of you about any questions you have about that. So I've had a long career in the technical, and I guess it's now called STEM fields.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And so now they're going to discuss their experiences working in the STEM H fields, their motivation behind doing that career, and any career advice they might have to get us started. And do you want to work backwards or go back to the...
Well, we can work backwards since I just talked a little bit about that. So yeah, I started in '84. Back then, PCs were not prevalent. So I started at the University of Virginia. I came out of, I didn't tell you my credentials. So I have a bachelor's in computer science, and I have a master's in systems engineering. So I'm an engineer by heart. I love math. And I've always loved math, and I think that's what took me into this career in the first place. But yeah, I started at the University of Virginia. I worked there as a user services person, so I helped people use computers. And back in that day, there were no microcomputers anywhere. There were no desktop. There were no phone. We just didn't have any of that in the 80s. So it was big mainframe computers. People used tapes and things like that to get their data read onto the computer. So there were a lot of people that had to be helping with those processes. So that's sort of what I did then. And then we moved into, as the technology curve went up, we had computers in the departments and places. So I started to work in a Unix administrator type of job, which was basically operating system kind of work in the desktop arena. And then from there I went to GE, and I did, the big, what we call ERP systems, which are sort of the student information system that you guys work on now, and there's administrative systems and HR systems and those sorts of things, and I did that for the corporate environment. And then I came back and worked at the University of Virginia again, and I started to manage enterprise-wide teams. So I started to manage teams that did all kinds of things, so the website and student information systems and applications and intranets and stuff like that. And so I've sort of been in that arena since around 2002, just in different capacities. And that's sort of what gave me the breadth of the knowledge and experience it would take to be a chief information officer. And so that's how I got here.
So, So again, my name is Anne. I teach biology, and I said my credentials earlier. And I guess I should there's so many things that I could say. I'm actually really curious. Can I do a quick show of hands? So like if you're here because you think you like science, or you might like major in science or do a career in science, are there any science-y? I see a couple of you that I think probably are. Yep. Okay, and I just want, because I know we maybe have some health people here and maybe some more like computer or engineering science type people. So yeah, I like science because it's fun. I think I always gravitated towards science as a discipline because there was stuff that you could do, and oftentimes with your hands, and questions that could be answered, and it was pretty exciting. Even back, I don't know, I think my 9th grade chemistry lab, we made soap, and it was just fun. And that's why I kept coming back to science. I also grew up spending a lot of time outdoors, camping a lot and hiking a lot, and I was just very curious about my world. And I was more the type to want to know how a tree did what a tree did, as opposed to like how a toaster worked. You know, there are those kids who take toasters apart and drive their parents crazy. I think that's my 5-year-old is heading down that track right now. But I just wanted to know how living things worked. And when I got to college, if you were interested in biology, I went to Harvard as an undergrad, and it just seemed like if you were interested in biology, you became a pre-med, because it just seemed like that's what everybody was doing. And so I kind of followed along like a good little sheep, and I spent 2 years saying that I was pre-med. And then in the summer between my sophomore and junior years, I came down to Virginia because my uncle at the time was a physician here in Central Virginia, and he connected me with some of his colleagues in the pediatric intensive care unit at UVA, and also the neonatal intensive care unit. And that cured me of my interest in medicine. So I realized I really wasn't interested, at least in that particular kind of medicine, and that was a personal choice, but I was glad that I saw it firsthand. And I would just encourage any of you, whatever career you're exploring, it's really good to experience it, even if you're just sort of shadowing somebody. It's really good to just see it. Sometimes a couple hours is enough to realize that you can check it off your list, or it's enough to go, oh, yeah, you know, I really do like this a lot. So shadowing, again, just for an afternoon, if you can start there, it's a really helpful thing. So that's kind of my motivation in coming back to science again and again. I was also always very interested in teaching. My first job out of college was as a laboratory technician, but I did that for about a year, and then I spent a whole summer teaching at a boarding school, both remedial biology and advanced placement biology, separate classes. And that convinced me, yeah, I love teaching, but man, I really need to get back and work on my own expertise and do the master's and do the PhD. So I think those are my motivations for choosing the career. I'd be happy to share more of my experience in terms of just what it's been like to be in a STEM field. And I think I'm supposed to say a little bit of career advice as well. That's one of the bullet points here. Gosh, there's lots of career advice. I would say at your stage, the best thing you can do is try the things that you think you're interested in. And again, that doesn't mean that you have to have a job in that thing. You could just get a shadowing opportunity, or even do an informational interview where you get connected with somebody in that field, and you take them out for lunch, or you take them out for coffee. You just request a little bit of their time. It's not a real interview, right? Make sure you know what an informational interview is. It is not a real interview. But that's a very powerful tool, and I think that's probably one of the best pieces of advice that I could give.
I probably don't need this, but I'll, well, let's see. I fell in love with chemistry in high school, and I fell in love with chemistry in high school because of my high school chemistry teacher, who was a Roman Catholic nun and about 4 feet high, and just was ecstatically enthusiastic about chemistry, and I caught it. I caught the bug. I went to college at a small women's college, which probably helped me not realize that I was going to encounter some resistance to being a woman in chemistry. As an undergrad in a women's college, I didn't encounter that. I didn't encounter it till I went to graduate school, and I walked into Emory University, and I was the only woman in the first year class, and there were no women faculty on the chemistry department at that point. That said, I had, an overall really great experience in graduate school. I always thought I would teach, and then I took a left turn, a right turn. I went to work for Ciba Geigy, chemical pharmaceutical company. And I stayed with Ciba. Ciba became Novartis Pharmaceuticals, and I stayed with them for almost 20 years. I always kept saying, well, I'm going to go back to teaching. I taught for a while right out of graduate school, and I even taught high school before graduate school. And I kept saying, I'm going back. Well, I did finally, guys. I did make it back. But I spent 20 years in industry. And there really, I guess career advice I would give to you is, besides Ann's, to try what you think you might enjoy. If you go to work in industry or even in academics, find someone that you admire, find someone that you like how they've managed their work and their career, and ask them to be your mentor, and spend time with them. I think my career in industry was really shaped by having really spectacular mentors who helped me, who gave me good advice, who helped me decide whether this next job was the right one or a bad decision. And so I think that for me was one of the real career, and even when I decided to leave Novartis, and I knew I was going back into teaching, my mentor at that point, while at first surprised, completely got it. And so I really would advise that's a really great way to do it. The other thing, as at the stage you're in, one of the things that really helped me realize, yes, I really do love chemistry the way I think I do, is I did what they now would call an REU. After my sophomore year, I went to Oak Ridge National Laboratory and spent a summer working there. And I was hooked. I was definitely then hooked. Those are called the Research Experience Undergraduate, REU, and those programs are really available. They're available they welcome the community college students, and I think those really do help you decide whether this is something that is what you want to do. And besides that, they really are beneficial to just your whole career path. So the REUs I really, really recommend.
Okay, guess it's back to me. So I chose math so I could sit in the cubicle and not have to do speeches in front of people, but no. Anyways, as a young adult, I always sort of was also found doing math was kind of fun. I was always really interested in doing puzzles. I was like, whenever the newspaper came, the first thing I did was go look for the crypto quip where you decipher what the message was. It was just something that I always really liked to do. And I had also had a very good experience at my high school with my math teachers. And I come from a long line of teachers, aside from my father, who's a scientist. And that's sort of, I always had thought that I would just be a teacher. So I went to Mary Washington in Fredericksburg, which is a small liberal arts school, and not surprisingly, I signed up to study math. I also have, one of the reasons I picked a liberal arts school is because I have a variety of interests. I've always liked to study different things, and so I did end up double majoring in music, much to the disappointment of my advisor, who really wanted me to double with computer science, because then I'd be really competitive in the marketplace, but that just wasn't what I wanted to do. So I did end up incorporating some of the two things together. My faculty were very supportive of me doing research. There's a lot of mathematical patterns in music, and I did some of that in undergraduate research. But as I got closer to graduation in undergrad, I realized that going into the high school or the middle school probably wasn't going to work for me. I got through pretty much all of the teaching courses, and once I got into the classroom, it was not really what I thought it would be. I didn't get to do as much math, and it was just, I had issues with like classroom control and things like that. So it was, and throughout my career, one of the biggest factors for my choices has always been like stress level. It was pretty clear to me at a young age that it's like, I just can't handle a lot of stress. So I quickly sort of chose a different path, and my advisor strongly recommended that I consider grad school. So I came down to UVA and did my master's in math with the intention of going into academia. And I was actually in the PhD program, but it was a very rigorous program. It was really stressful. Again, this is again another theme, and I couldn't do it. So I ended up leaving with my master's, and I went into industry for a while. And I worked in a variety of positions in banking and insurance, but I still always wanted to come back to that teaching thing. So I started adjuncting at, I think here, and then I got a full-time position at Germana, and I worked there for a while before I decided that this is what I wanted to do. And so that's when I went back and did my doctorate sort of part-time on the side as I was teaching. So I didn't have that many barriers as a woman in STEM. Partly I think it's because I went to a liberal arts school. They were very supportive of this. Was like one of the few girls, I would say, in a lot of my classes, especially once we got up into real analysis and abstract algebra. But there was never really like any prejudices put upon me, I guess I would say. In terms of career, I think that a lot of people tend to put themselves into a box, kind of like what I did, and I was like, this is what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be a high school math teacher, and then sometimes it just does not what you think it's gonna be, and I think that it's good to explore, as the other faculty were saying, different positions, but whatever, I mean, in this century, it's pretty common for people to switch careers. They did not often, like Barbara's saying, you often will work in multiple positions. I mean, I was in industry for about 5 to 7 years, so I mean, and I don't think I'll go back to that, but I think that it's not something to take off the table, that, you might have a variety of careers in your lifetime, so don't, put all your eggs in one basket, I guess.
All right. As for me, I've always loved the sciences as a little girl. I am African, so in high school back in Africa, they would put us in 3 categories of classes. You were either science, commerce, you were the one who went into business and stuff like that, and then art, government, politics. So I always had that drive for sciences. And then I came to the United States, and I wanted to be a medical doctor, like my dad. I went for pre-med conferences. I got a degree, BA in biology, pre-med. And I even did a medical internship in the Bronx, New York. But something just didn't feel right. I was looking for something that would allow me to exert my passion. And I just felt being a medical doctor would not do that. So I started to explore my options. Okay, I love the sciences, what else? Also, growing up, I loved to care for people. And I was nicknamed Mother Teresa as a little girl as well. So I said, okay, I love caring for people, and I love the sciences, so what career can I use to meet these 2 passions? And I remember my husband telling me nursing. And I was like, no, I don't want nursing. Remember, I'm African. Nursing in Africa is so different. It's not what it is here. It's not as prestigious as it is here. It doesn't have the degree of autonomy that, that exists here in the States. So I was like, no, not nursing. My husband is like, Irene, nursing. I think it's gonna work for you. Just do your research. I was like, okay. So I did my research, and I found out, wow, nursing might just be the career for me. And that was how I went ahead and got my bachelor's in nursing. And I have not had a regret ever since. I have loved it, I've enjoyed it. It gives me a medium to care for people, to advocate. So why am I saying this? My motivation stems from my passion, first of all, and you also want to find out what you're good at. And within a year of practicing as a nurse, I knew I wanted to teach. I enjoyed going into the patient's room, educating them about their health conditions, their meds and stuff like that. And then, people would say to me, Irene, you're good at teaching. You just have that natural flair. My mom would tell me the same thing. And then I found out that my late dad was not only a medical doctor, but he was also a teacher himself. He was a professor. So I was like, okay, so it looks like my traits come from somewhere. So that's how I decided to go ahead and get my master's in nursing education. Experiences working as a female in nursing. As you all know, nursing is a female-dominated field. But, to be honest, it's been a great experience and very rewarding to be a nurse because you're caring for people, you're catering to their needs. And I think the best part of my job as a nurse clinician was when a patient would say thank you or a family member would say thank you. It doesn't matter how my day went, it doesn't matter how challenging it was, but to just see that look of appreciation and those words, that made my day. The challenge with this profession is that even though it's a female-dominated profession, there are some men in it. Men are treated differently. They're treated differently by other healthcare professionals. They're treated differently by patients and family members. That's what I would say would be a challenge. But I just want to tell you that no matter what challenges you encounter in life, don't let it defer you from your goals, from your passion, from your dreams. Continue to aspire to do what you want to do. And my advice, they've said it, find someone that inspires you. Find something that inspires you. Find a mentor. Build your network. Test the waters. Explore. It's okay if you try something and it doesn't work. Try again. Keep trying. And you're in a system where it's easy to move from one career to the next. I come from Africa. If you're in the science field, you're stuck. If you started with commerce or art, you're stuck. But the good thing, the beauty about this place is you could move around. You're never stuck. You have the fluidity to move around and make career choices. But remember, it's a career, so you want to do something that you love, you enjoy, you're passionate about, and you're good at.
So, well, hi, my name is Rashida Jones. I'm a native of Atlanta. I got interested in STEM at a very early age, like around 8, when I got my first microscope, and that's what started the whole entire thing. I went back to school later. I was once a teacher, and I transitioned to finish up my graduate degree in chemistry. I just recently graduated from UVA with a master's in chemical biology, and right now I currently am a chemistry adjunct instructor for the first part of general chemistry. I have to say my experience with STEM has been very wonderful. I was fortunate to be a part of a program called the Peach State LSAM program. It's kind of like Ronald McNair, and so it prepares you from undergrad on what everything you need to do for us getting graduate school, applying to graduate school. I had to participate in research for 3 consecutive years. I was part of the program, competed at different regional conferences, as well as national, things of that sort. So that really prepared me for UVA, because UVA was very, very, very hard. It's a very hard school, but I have enjoyed it. My motivation would be, I remember seeing Ronald McNair when he went to space when I was a little kid. And I knew I didn't have the mathematical background to be an astronaut, but I knew I wanted to do science. And so that's what really pushed me, besides having my microscope at the same time. And I had a lot of people around me that influenced me. I have 2 relatives. One is a microbiologist, one is a chemist. That's probably where I get it from. And I also have a doctor. So I had a really big support system growing up, which I'm very fortunate to have. And my advice to women going into STEM, don't give up. Because I went back late. I'm 40. I went back and got my chemistry degree at 35. So don't give up.
I'm going to put the microphone here, and you can come up and line up if you have questions.
Hello, good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Very nice to meet all of you. Thank you so much for your time. Irene, I can relate as a Nigerian. Grew up in London, and I'm a career changer, attorney. And I was thinking about going into nursing, but you, who has the biochemistry background, you inspired me with something you said. So my question is for Irene and for Anne. First of all, Irene, as someone who's in the biomedical science field, what career opportunities exist? And then are there any opportunities within the hospital? And I'm asking this because I work for UVA at the moment, and I was considering nursing, but I'll get to that. But those are my two questions.
So the thing that comes to mind immediately in the life sciences would be research. And so with a bachelor's degree in a science like biology, biochemistry, or chemistry, you could work as a laboratory technician in a research lab at a big university like UVA. If you go on to get a master's, you open yourself up to industry a little bit more. And you could work, again, sort of either in academics or for a pharmaceutical company or a startup biotech company. If you go on to get a PhD, you are starting then to track more into research and being the head of that kind of laboratory, which is, I think, a very long road. And so it's right for some people and not for others. It is not impossible to do that road as a career change, but most people who do that are doing it kind of straight out of a very linear path, straight out of college. So those are just some of the opportunities that are available.
Okay, thank you. And Irene, you mentioned that you have a BSN and an MPH,
Yes.
which kind of is a little up my street. What opportunities exist both within the hospital and outside, to your knowledge, for someone like me who is very interested in virology, immunology, and epidemiology? Basically, I'm interested in that because I'm a former employee of the VDH, and so I got exposed to that public health side. And then now, as an employee at UVA, I'm kind of like a patient care tech, and so I'm getting exposed to that side. And then having just recently taken microbiology, that virology and immunology just got me like, wow, I'm so rushed for that. So I know that those three are my interests: epidemiology, immunology, and virology. I'm just wondering if nursing is right for me, or am I more biomedical? And what opportunities exist both within the hospital and outside for someone like me?
Okay. So can I ask you a couple of questions?
Yeah, sure.
Are you comfortable with patient contact?
Yes.
Can you stand blood, body fluids?
Yes.
Okay. Then I think that you could have a career in nursing. Since you have a background in, you said, immunology, and what else was it?
No, I'm an attorney that's my background.
Okay.
But I've worked as an employee of the VDH, the Virginia Department of Health, for a year,
Okay.
and got exposed to that public health side. But having recently taken microbiology, I'm finding that I have a love for immunology and virology as well.
Okay. Well, you could go ahead and become a nurse, an RN, and then when you graduate, there are a variety of fields that you could specialize in. You could become an infectious disease nurse. You could become a legal nurse consultant because of that attorney background that you have. You could also become a nurse researcher and combine all that background together. So,
Okay, thank you. I wasn't
You're
aware
welcome.
of this, so thank
I
you
might-
very much.
you're welcome.
I might add that you could explore the Masters of Public Health.
Yes.
And if you're interested in epidemiology research, that is a vastly, rapidly growing career. So you could do epidemiological research with an MPH and look at virology as part of that research, for example.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to interrupt and throw a complete curveball at you. And with a degree in science and a background as an attorney, any pharmaceutical company in the country would love to hire you as a patent attorney. And they would take all of that science knowledge and then apply your legal skills as well. And Novartis, when I was there, the patent attorneys were spectacular scientists who just had the knowledge of the legal piece of it that always made us think of something we hadn't thought of as we were doing our research on a new drug. So.
I got another curveball. Policy. So this is you could get into helping form public policy. Again, that would utilize your JD background. We need people who can interface between the law and science, particularly as it relates to forming policy. That could be done at many different types of institutions. You could be in the government, but you might be with the National Science Foundation or the National Institutes of Health or the Center for Disease Control. So you have a very special suite of skills. And I would say, just to generalize this and open it up to everybody else, we all have paths, and sometimes they seem quite linear, and sometimes they seem really circuitous, and that's okay. You have translational skills that you can bring from your past and apply to new things. And then sometimes you have a very specific set of skills, as in your case with your attorney's background, and you can use that in creative ways. So there are lots of things that you can do with that specific skill set as you add new skills.
You could even be involved in international relations as well, and Nurses Without Borders. I mean, the sky is your limit. You have a variety of options.
Yeah, the JD was not a waste.
Not that no knowledge is ever lost, trust me. Yeah.
For, I guess, most of you, I really like chemistry and microbiology. I, too, was given a microscope at a young age, so I've always loved to find the most disgusting and smelly things out in the wild and put it underneath my microscope to see what was floating around. So, and I also like marine biology. I love animals, both big and small, but I love chemistry because I've always wanted to know the makeup of everything, like the air, the water, everything, what's their chemical compositions, that kind of stuff. So what do you suggest would be a good field or a good maybe job area that would be great for someone who likes both biology and chemistry? Because I really like marine biology, but I also like other things as well. A lot of science.
Well, I actually got a PhD in chemistry and then did postdoc in biochemistry. And biochemistry may be one of those intersecting fields where you could find things you loved from both biology and chemistry. One of the questions you really have to ask yourself about science in general is, what do you want your day to look like? And there really are two paths in science. And if you want to stay a working scientist, there is the biology. Do you want to be outdoors? Do you want to be in the field? Do you want to be? Do you want to bring it back to the bench? Do you want to do research on new drugs? That kind of thing. So there are really broad spectrum of options. But I really, it's what goes back to the thing we've all said a couple of times. Try a few things, do some summer internship programs, or the research, the REU kind of thing. See what you love, because there are certain people who become a scientist on the bench and feel like it's claustrophobic, and those are the folks who really love being in the field. And so there's some different paths, for different people based on some of that. But it is a matter of, for me at least, of helping you try to find what you love, what you have a passion about.
I'll just say, too, sometimes it's not defined. Like for me, I started school in 1979, and it's a long story, but yeah, it's a long story. But I started in nursing, but then went to computer science. But part of the reason I wasn't doing computer science as much as I loved math was because it was all about sitting behind a computer and coding. I'm like, no, I really like people. I don't want to sit behind a computer all day and do coding. I like to work with people. But by the time I was a little more mature and realized that computer science was really where my passion lied with math and everything else, I started to think to myself, well, maybe I could sit between the computer and somebody trying to get something done with the computer. Maybe that's my fit. And I'll tell you, my entire career has been that, a person sitting in between the computers and the things that need to get done. I've been that translator. And it doesn't matter what title I'm in necessarily, it's sort of grown through who I am. So it may be interesting to know just kind of who you are, what you enjoy, what your passion is. Things might just grow from that in terms of where you land and what titles you might actually happen to fall into in your career.
My name is Katherine Lee Ware, and I am also doing a career shift and wanted to ask you guys, does public policy play a role in your job, either how you teach or what you're teaching or research-wise? And then also, if you ever have done a grant-funded project, how was that application process as a female? Did you feel there were more hurdles, or did you feel kind of welcomed into that? Those are...
I mean, we're affected by policy in terms of complying with things like the Pell grants that students are on, and we have to record attendance. And I mean, that's just something that comes to mind immediately. We have to report on things like that. I mean, I think policy affects all of our lives on a daily basis. We may need to be in M229 right now with Carnegie Jorgensen to really fully appreciate that, but that's just one thing that comes to mind.
And I'll just add to that, absolutely, public policy affects everyone. We have, in the healthcare setting, we have standards that we have to meet. UVA, for example, they have magnet status. That comes with standards, patient satisfaction, staff satisfaction. And, public policy is important for public health as well. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Healthy People 2020. And one of the goals is to get rid of health disparity. And I'm actually doing my PhD right now, and my dissertation is on refugees. And that's what I'm trying to do, is to tackle health disparity that affects this population. So yes, public policy it affects us all. It's very important.
And as far as grant processes, I've been a part of a number of them. I would say, I'm older than Sue, that life has changed a lot over my career. I got a PhD in 1982, grant process then was very different, in terms of gender than I think it is now. I mean, so was science. I mean, now PhDs in chemistry, probably, Dr. Richardson, you may can help me. I think 35 or close to 40% of PhDs in this country in chemistry are granted to women, as opposed to 1982, I think it was 9%. So I think that issue for me, I think you'll find that not to be a hurdle in science in the way that it might have been earlier.
I would say that I've also been part of a number of grants, even as the principal investigator on a grant at my previous institution. And in that particular arena, I don't see any, gender issues at all whatsoever. One statistic that is interesting that stands to this day, and I'm a perfect example, when I was a graduate student, it was about 50-50 in terms of men, women in biology. But by the time I was a professor running my own lab, I was the only female in my department. Now that's a little unusual, and it was a small department. But the ratio is about right. I was one of 6. And so we still do see rapid attrition of women at those levels of going into the postdoc years after the PhD and into the early career and then into even the later career. The higher you get, the more male it is, even in biology.
Hi, my name is Hannah Moore, and I'm actually a business major here, but I manage the graduate program for biomedical engineering at UVA, and I just wanted to build off of that question. I report to the NIH every year with our grant numbers, and it is increasingly every year with engineering at UVA. 50%, we're actually dominating the males with grant numbers these days, which is quite amazing.
Is that applications? Numbers of applications or awarded?
Awards, yeah, fellowships and NIH grants.
That's great.
It's actually, this past year, 48%.
That's great.
I have a question, because this is something I hear a lot. So what's your advice to someone who says, I'm bad at math, I would never succeed?
All right, I guess I'll take that.
Are you going to take it? Yeah.
I mean, I do think that there is a difference maybe between how much effort you have to put in to do math. Just as it takes me a lot more time to learn how to spell a word correctly or construct a grammatically correct sentence. So, but that being said, I don't think that there really is a cap on what you want to achieve. I mean, I really do think that, for as much as I've done in math, I really would not consider myself like, definitely not even like in the top like 10 or 20% of people in the country that are good at math. So I just have always worked really hard at it. And one of the things I also think is that people, unfortunately, when they tell themselves this or they've been told that, then they sort of have this negative attitude going into it, which also can sort of make it difficult for you to do well. But I really do think that if you work at it, you can do it. I mean, it's just.
I would say the same, well, similar. And as a person who loves math, I would want to break that conversation. Well, let's break it down to something smaller. Let's talk about the little things, build back up. A lot of times people think they're bad at math because they may have had a bad math experience in the past. But what I find is if you kind of get back to a root cause of that comment and go back and maybe start with some of the easier building blocks and build them up and give them confidence, what I find is a lot of people love that they can do math, and when you find out that you can, you really feel successful. And then you want to go to the next level, you want to try the next thing. And different maths are different for different people too. Yeah.
And there's an interestingly body of research that says somewhere along the way, somewhere around the 8th grade, women change from being good at math to deciding they are bad at math. I don't think they changed. I think the messages that they got, and so I've seen it again and again, someone walk into my chemistry class and say, I'm really bad at math, I'm gonna have a terrible time in here. And then they realize, no, actually, I can do this. I can do this math. This isn't, beyond me. And maybe it's a couple trips to the math center to remember something they've forgotten, but I think a lot of that is easy to overcome.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.